I just felt like, wow, this is the gift. Like, this is the reason that you hope your last movie was popular enough. It was to get to do a movie like this. To me, this is like a total gift. This is the reason I do it. Like, this is the reason I like it. I like acting, that is. And it makes all the other stuff worth it. And when I say all the other stuff, like worrying about a movie being popular, worrying about, working consistently, all the stuff that makes you nervous, this is the kind of prize, I would say.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Jesse Eisenberg is an actor. He sat down with me in New York City to talk about the work.
Do you have a typical way that you begin your preparation process for a role?
I do some specific things, but I would and I work with an acting coach who's helpful in specific ways. But the main thing I think about, I suppose, is there a genuine emotional center at the character, with the character, because everything will flow from that, the character's behavior. Even in a movie like The Art of Self-Defense, which has this very intentionally stilted kind of quality to it, where the characters speak in these unnaturally blunt ways, there's still an emotional experience that the character's having. So then I think about, I guess just think about and I don't even think about this necessarily so consciously, but why, based on this character's emotional experience and psychology, why would he speak in this kind of stilted way? Mm-hmm. So the movie like The Art of Self-Defense is a good example. The character is like a child. He lives in this world where people speak in this way, and there's no branding in this world. He buys dog food, it just says dog food on it. The technology doesn't seem to be modern. And so I think, this character is kind of living in a world where it's possible to still be a baby, in a world where you're going to buy dog food and there's one thing and it says dog food. It's possible to kind of be a baby there. So, how can he think and speak and stand with his body? How do babies stand? Well, when babies stand, they don't really know where to put their arms, or maybe when a 10-year-old boy stands, he doesn't really know where to put his arms because they're hanging and he's growing, maybe his arms grew faster than his torso. So then he stands in this different way, and how does he stare at people? Well, he's not a person who has a lot of let's say, contemporary intellectual thoughts. So when he's looking at somebody, it's maybe a little wide-eyed and innocent. And so, so he presents himself this way. He's egoless. So a movie like The Art of Self-Defense is kind of, in some ways, easier to talk about and harder to talk about. Harder to talk about because it's not a really naturalistic kind of movie, and easier to talk about it because there's all these kind of unusual elements to it. How the character behaves, moves, talks, the tone of voice. This is not a character who uses the kind of tone of voice I'm using now, which is from my chest or my gut, kind of a lower register. He talks more from just the front of his mouth because he's not a person that's exactly sure of what he's saying. So, that kind of stuff. Again, this all flows unconsciously from the character's emotional experience, which to me in this movie is kind of like a 10-year-old boy's.
Right. And I want to pinpoint something you said. You have to find an actual reason, based on the script, that this is stilted language, mm-hmm. but a lesser actor might just play it stilted as it is, surface level. Mm-hmm. You feel based on what you just said, and clarify if I'm wrong, that you need to find a reason within him, backstory-wise or something, that makes him talk like that.
Yeah, some emotional thing. This is the way that I was just raised by my parent. My dad is a sociology teacher, so he talks about the reasons people behave the way they do. So this is probably less from an acting school perspective, even though acting school does tell you to look for the emotional reason behind somebody's behavior. But this is also just how I was raised, to think about people's behavior in an interesting way, just based on the way my family talks about people.
But don't you think that might be why you're a good actor?
I suppose so, but I imagine you could also grow up with, parents who make you think about Freudian psychology and not be a good actor. There's some other aspect of it too, the way you can access your own emotional inner life. I've always been a very emotional person. The way you have maybe enough self-awareness to be able to understand A, who you are, and B, how other people see you, so that you can kind of use that to your advantage. I know that when I play certain things, it might be funny and when I do something else, I know no one will find it funny, just based on my own sense of self-awareness, which I have developed and which might be totally inaccurate, but I'm aware of it in some way. I've done like acting classes. I've taught acting classes, and one of the things I noticed that's not that sometimes people are missing is just an awareness of who they are. And sometimes it's interesting when you could tell people are
who they are at themselves, not
who they are themselves.
Yeah.
Yes, somebody who is like, you see this all the time. Somebody who's trying to be really kind of tough and cool. These things that our society places, kind of like these things that seem aspirational. But when they do it, it feels inauthentic, and audiences know that. But instead of them, let's say, embracing what they do have, they strive for this other thing, then it looks authentic, and then those people can't succeed in any of those things. Unless sometimes what ends up happening is people like that wind up playing characters who are lying and hiding it, and that's sometimes an irony that they're not even aware of. But
it worked out because it
worked out, but that's not a sustainable thing, because you can't really continuously play roles where it's capitalizing on a thing you're not aware of.
Right. In that same vein, a quote from you said something like, acting can be a cathartic outlet for things we don't get to do in real life. And you were talking about your acting teacher who encouraged you to pursue that direction of things, saying, and this is your acting teacher talking now that you were quoting, if you have some purpose with the role, then the character will be imbued with something that is indescribable but valuable because you have purpose to play it.
Yeah.
And this made me think of like what I've learned from talking to actors, which is like there's this mystical, undefinable other layer of energy. Mm-hmm. It seems. I mean, not to sound too new agey about it,
no,
but that you tap into, and in this case that you were just talking about, the energy is your energy in a pursuit of needing to work out something.
Yeah.
As an audience member, I'm just seeing something different I'm feeling the energy.
That's right. Well put. Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah. The Art of Self-Defense is a really kind of easy example in the sense that I'm playing a character that reminds me of kind of like me at 10 years old, and I always have a need and always have an interest in like going back to me as a young person, kind of thinking about, as we all do, looking back on our lives and kind of evaluating our childhood, and so for me, I look back on my younger self and I kind of feel bad, for some struggles that I had as a kid. And so doing this movie in a way like allows me to almost cathartically, therapeutically kind of like account for that young person, because I'm kind of playing him and I'm playing the innocence, and I'm not judging him in a way I judge myself as a kid for being, smaller or whatever, whatever typical people typically feel about themselves. Some parts don't necessarily always lend themselves to like having a cathartic experience, but that doesn't mean you can't, I just did a Zombieland sequel. That movie is not necessarily going to lend itself perfectly to having like a cathartic emotional experience. There are certain things that you can do, but like, but that doesn't mean it's not valuable in some other way. For example, the movie is like a comedy. So, okay, well, how can I, I was like, how can I get comfortable with the fact that I like humor, or something, or, and it wasn't always a thing to like, or what the character's going through in the movie. My character is like in a relationship that he's very comfortable with this character from the first movie, and that kind of gets upended. I mean, so there's stuff like that. So even though you look at it as kind of like a light, accessible kind of comedy, there's stuff in there that you could think about. And it's not always appropriate to kind of display the depth of emotion that some of those things can bring up. So you have to have enough self-awareness to understand the tone, or I think David Mamet used to call it the texture of the piece. You have to understand the texture of the piece to know that it's not appropriate in like a zombie comedy to like weep when the character's breaking up with a girlfriend, because it's not appropriate for the tone of the piece. Sometimes you see actors who are clearly trying to use the piece to kind of, let's say, further themselves at the expense of the thing. They usually get cut out or re-edited because it's not effective for the story. So since you mentioned that we can speak a little more in depth to people maybe who are actors or to people who are directors. So I will say, like, it's not a good idea ever to use to use a particular movie or a play as like a platform for your own for your own either therapy or a platform for your own performance style. Because it can be, it's usually, it can hurt the project, and it ultimately will not make you look very good either.
Right.
So these kind of things should be private hopes. I hope
Right.
I can kind of use this to get myself into the emotion of the scene or into the spirit of this movie. Not that I can't wait for people to see this, and realize that I had a difficult childhood. Those things are, self-serving, obnoxious, and they'll usually hurt the project, and you'll probably get cut out of it anyway. So I don't ever tell people, hey, in this movie I'm talking about that. It's obnoxious, But if it can help you get there and it's private, do it. I'm not really a fan of telling the other actors what I'm doing, because to me it just seems like to undermine what makes that special. What makes it special is that it's a private experience that you have. So I never talk about it with the other actors. I'm usually suspicious of actors who come on set and immediately tell you about their acting process. It just seems odd. But I think it's good to have these kind of private thoughts, keep them private, and let it inform the thing that you're doing in a kind of subtle way.
This movie, The Art of Self-Defense, is all about tone. If you guys didn't reach this tone together, the thing's a disaster. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, or it's just something unwatchable.
Yeah.
So was that tone baked into the script? Did you see that there? Did you say, I want to, okay, I know how to play this. This is, and I hope the other actors play it this way. Or
Yeah.
was it like directed out of you there all together, and you're like, oh, okay, I see how this fits together?
That's a really perfect question, because it exactly encapsulates everything I was thinking about it, which is that, and so my answer to your question is both. The first month before filming the movie, I just asked this director, Riley Stearns, who wrote this brilliant script and is a great director. I asked him every day the exact question that you just posed to me. I said, please just assure me that the tone of this is not naturalistic. I said, I'm just going to read every line to you, and I want to do it in this strange way that I don't hear people speaking like this in person. Tell me that this is correct. This is how I'm reading it. And he's an unusual guy. He's direct, but he's incredibly earnest and very sweet. And so I couldn't tell if he was just saying, yes, that's correct to be nice, or if he was saying, yes, that's correct because he was, it's his second movie and he's just deferring to me, who's been in more movies than he's directed. And so, it turned out over the course of the experience, I realized he's incredibly specific and he has a great idea of everything he wants. But I had to ask him every day for a month, please tell me that this is not the typical kind of hapless protagonist who finds his inner strength through sport. This is a guy who lives in an entirely parallel universe where people speak in this unusual way. And he said, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that sounds right. Instead of saying like, yes, exactly, do it this way. And,
So
and
you were constantly worried.
Panicked, yeah. Panic. Only after like the first week of shooting, which on a movie like this is like a quarter of the movie because it shoots, it's so quick to shoot because it's an independent movie. So, after a week of shooting, a quarter of the movie is done. But only after that did I realize, okay, I felt like I was in the groove. Alessandro Nivola, who plays the second main character and has the bulk of the dialogue, the monologues really, he came in the second week, and I think he was also feeling like kind of eager to learn about what the tone was, because it's so strange. Yeah. And Riley said, just every character in this movie speaks earnestly. They're saying exactly what's on their mind. And I would say halfway through the movie, I absolutely fell in love with the tone and realized, like, if I could act like this forever, I would love it, because it's not. Two things. One is like it's easier in certain ways, and when I say easier, I guess I'm using the word easier to say like I'm not as self-critical. Like in a movie like Zombieland, I'm incredibly self-critical after each scene, because if it's not perfectly natural, if the timing's not perfect, it kind of fails because it's a naturalistic tone. But with this, the audience is not going into it thinking that these people speak like I do, so they're not hypercritical of it, and by extension, I'm not like hypercritical of myself. Because it's so odd to begin with. You can almost do anything you want. Right. So it was really freeing. So on the one hand, you might watch the movie and think, wow, that's kind of challenging for an actor, because it looks like it's this very stilted tone. They must have had it figured out. But really, the experience is like, I could do anything. This is incredibly freeing. Yeah. No one expects me to deliver this line a certain way. Where Zombieland, you're kind of like, I'm like the kind of in for the audience. Like they're looking at me and say, I'm kind of like rolling my eyes at the weird stuff. So you think like I'm supposed to think like that, but that was not the case with this. There was nothing that was supposed to be completely accessible about the character.
And I wonder if that's why I really liked this movie so much, because I'm such a cynical moviegoer, and I hate when things land properly. Like and if something's always landing weird. Like I didn't know how to feel about this for halfway through the movie.
Of course, exactly.
And so I'm like, I'm loving every minute of it.
Yeah.
Because I like that part. But I'm wondering if like the person in the middle of the country is going to be like, what? That's just weird.
I think like people are getting much more savvy than because they're able to see everything.
Yeah.
You know, like it used to be. I mean, I grew up in the suburbs in New Jersey, so you had like, you know, 2 options to see the things. Like if I was growing up now, not 20 years ago, I would be able to watch a movie like this. Like this would have been the perfect movie for the 13-year-old me, 15-year-old me, because it's a style of humor that I aspire to, which I would say is kind of like a sophisticated sense of humor that's both ironic and sincere at the same time. Yeah. And I would have loved something like this. I would never have an opportunity to see it growing up in the suburbs, but you know, if Netflix was there or Amazon, whatever, you know, they could watch it at home. Right. So I think people are savvy. I think the fact that I'm in it and I'm in more accessible movies than this might maybe make some people watch it. Like I do these plays that I write that are kind of like more obscure, and I meet a lot of people who came to see it because they would see me in like Zombieland or something more accessible, and it turned them on to then a play, you know. So there are different aspects to this movie that I think allow it to be viewed by people. There's like the karate element. I think people will like watch this movie that don't normally watch kind of avant-garde stuff, and I hope they do, because I think there's a kind of sophistication to this movie that you don't see a lot.
Absolutely. I'm with you on that. I loved The Double. Saw it many times. When I saw The Art of Self-Defense, I wanted to go back and see it again, because I was like, it's a similar character. It's a similar absurdity. Exactly. And I was thinking what your characterization work was like. Yeah. To make it different, because it is different. But he's in a similar situations. He's a similar type of guy.
Yes. No. Exactly. And I when I met Riley, I said, you know, I think I understand how to do this from having done The Double. I felt like The Double was like a very big learning experience for me, which is like, I understand. It was the first movie I did that was like really unnatural, that was really takes place in this parallel universe. And Richard is a genius, Richard Ayoade. I mean, everybody who meets him thinks he's the smartest person they met, and I'm one of those people as well. And he has a great way of being able to describe it and articulate it in a way that doesn't like, that makes everything very clear. That said, it is a very kind of obscure, weird tone to get into, and it took me a while to kind of understand it. And The Art of Self-Defense kind of felt like doing an extension of that, but I didn't have the same learning curve because I felt like I understood it. These movies are like kind of these like fever dreams, like that take place in, I always think of like when you have a nightmare, like all the stuff that happens in the nightmare is like stuff from your life in different places, and it's all like to your disadvantage. The elevator doors don't open, the woman who you don't want or you're nervous to talk to is standing there, and these movies, The Double and The Art of Self-Defense, both have those elements where the world seems to be opposed to the main character. And so in a way, like, and the main character is kind of like an innocent baby. The only difference with like The Double is that I was playing the kind of alpha too, I don't know how you would describe it, but kind of like the antagonist as well. And so there was kind of like an element of playing off each other, whereas this movie I was just playing Casey, the beta, I guess you would say. And so, but otherwise, no, I would say they're a definite companion, and in my thoughts, it's the same kind of person. It's the same kind of person. I would love to play that part a million times. Like, you know, people play the same characters in different movies all the time. I mean, you know, especially like, you know, somebody who's like an action star and they're playing the action hero in 16 different versions of an action movie or something. You know, these movies are so strange that to play a very similar character in 2 of them is kind of an unusual coincidence. But I'm happy I did. I do think they're very similar, and I would love to do it again. I don't know if I would ever have the opportunity. They're such strange movies to begin with. No one's there's not a formula that people are doing.
I know, and I hope this is a success so that people want to make stuff like this.
Yeah, that's exactly what I feel too.
You tell the story a couple times of Kristen Stewart at the age of 17 or something, like saying in a scene with you, yelling cut, and saying, "I'm lying to you."
Yes.
You know? And I thought, I love that story.
I know.
But what do you do when you realize you're lying, quote unquote, in a scene, or it's just not or you realize it's like, and no one else maybe is realizing that, that you're not connecting.
Yeah, a few things come to mind. The first thing is I probably immediately tell the script supervisor, the person who takes all the notes on each scene, please put a note for the editor that I think it was not good for me. And this happens all the time. Actors could do this if they want.
They could. I mean, so I never heard anybody say that. So you could literally like have them make a little X on the thing. An actor X.
So I feel like that would be overstepping. So what I do is like I just say like, please make a note for the editor and the director to look at that take because I didn't feel good about it. Wow. So she writes exactly that cool. next to that take.
Yeah.
But the take might work perfectly for the purposes of the movie. So I don't want to say cut it out entirely, but I say, I didn't feel good about that. Please look at it. You could also say to the director, hey, can I do another one? I didn't feel good about that. Yeah. The other thing to do is, and this is more like acting theoretical 101 than it is like practical movie stuff, but this is more like academic stuff, which is like, don't deny that the character is not feeling phony. Think that, okay, if you're feeling like self-conscious, like I've had this on sets a few times where you suddenly have this out of body experience where you realize I'm just a person on set looking at an actor who's fake, wearing a fake hat, wearing a fake jacket. And it's a really terrifying experience because you just feel really self-conscious, like a deer in the headlights. What I've discovered is, well, maybe that's related to what the character's feeling. So the time I had this most on set, I had like basically a panic attack with Woody Harrelson in Zombieland. We were in the first Zombieland, and part of it really had to do with the fact that it was like a first like big movie I was in, and I felt probably a little nervous to be there. And Woody Harrelson's like a really wonderful actor. I felt nervous maybe to be with him, but I had this really surreal experience that in our opening meeting scene, I basically had like a panic attack when the camera was on me. Like I suddenly got so self-conscious. I realized, oh my God, I'm fake. I'm just this person here in a fake jacket. This is going to be the first time people hear my voice in this movie. I'm screwing it up now. This is the way my voice sounds. And I had basically, I shut down. Wow. And you know, the more I like thought about it, and I thought about this for like years because I was begging the gods that this doesn't happen to me again. Yeah. The more I thought about it and discussed it with acting coaches, like basically it was like, the character was like nervous to meet Woody Harrelson's character. Yeah. The character was nervous to talk because of that moment. And actually maybe there was something actually magical happening and lucky happening and fortunate, which is that I was feeling the things that the character was feeling. Right. And maybe unconsciously it was actually benefiting me, you know, in some way or informing what my character was feeling. And actually maybe it worked, even though I felt very nervous and uncomfortable and felt like I couldn't be funny and loose. Maybe the character couldn't be funny and loose. Right. So this is like the way to get through a panic on stage where you can't cut, is that you think, well, actually the character is going through this. And once you do that, the trick you play on yourself is you start taking the character more seriously because you're saying, character is a human being with these feelings, and so am I. Yeah. And the character's feelings can be as complex, even in like a zombie comedy, as my very complicated feelings of being intimidated by my job or my co-star, for example. Yeah. So don't deny that it's bad. Kristen is a great example, because she was 17 and everything. But she's still, we've done now 3 movies together or something, including like 1 2 years ago or something. So like I worked with her more recently and she's just as she was. She's like, she just has like a great sense of her own like level of inauthenticity. Mm-hmm. And she's just great, even in movies that are like, she's in these big accessible movies, these big popular movies. And like, I know she has the same basis of judging herself and everything.
Do you think she's a natural? Is that a thing?
Yeah. So when she was 17 and we were doing Adventureland together, I kept saying to the director, like, my God, I'm working alongside a movie star. I had this feeling like, I never had that feeling before. Like, oh, this person's just like a movie star. I didn't even know what I meant by that. Yeah. But just a kind of like charisma, kind of you're curious about what she's thinking. I don't even know what she's thinking. Maybe she's not thinking anything to do with the part, but there's a certain quality. And I guess I would call that a natural in the sense that I work with this brilliant actress, Marin Ireland, just now, and she always calls it, I love this expression, she calls it the stuff you get for free. And so you get a certain amount of things for free. I don't know if your eyes narrow in some kind of way that the audience thinks you're pensive. Maybe you're not a pensive person, but that's the kind of thing you get for free. Yeah. Also, my friend Richard Ayoade is obsessed with physiognomy, face shape. And it's basically the same thing. It's like the audience, if you have a face that looks funny when you're angry, you will be in a lot of comedies playing stressed out people. Yeah. You might think of yourself as like playing a very sincere, stressed out person, but by virtue of your facial structure, that might play in comedies. This is, again, the stuff you get for free, stuff you're not really intending, but that the audience ascribes to you based on your bone structure, based on, certain things, the way you pronounce certain words.
Yeah.
So we're also contending with that. And the more actors, like, on the one hand, it's kind of good to know that stuff so that you can kind of avoid certain things or capitalize on certain things and take control of your career. But on the other hand, it's not great to know all that stuff because you can kind of become self-conscious or use it as a crutch.
Go crazy too.
That's true.
You mentioned that because you don't watch yourself after the performance is done, ever, that you have a certain freedom in the moment in the scene, knowing that you will never be watching this.
Yeah.
And I thought that's so crazy and so amazing.
Yeah.
Like that might be freeing to some people, but I'm not sure there's anybody else that is really, I know a lot of people don't like to watch themselves, but they can't think I'm never going to see this ever. Like I'm performing it right now. It's totally out of my hands. An editor's going to make it whatever way they're going to make it. Director's going to do whatever they're going to do with it.
Yeah.
So I don't have to worry about how I look, basically, is what you're saying. Is that right?
Yeah, look, behave, think, mess up. Yeah. Well, so my background is in theater where you have, you do the thing and then it's over.
Yeah.
You don't kind of re-examine it. You're not sitting in an audience laughing at all the great moments, watching yourself do it. And to me, there's something so vain. I mean, it's like a strange vanity to doing that and everything. Not that it's bad, of course. It's like the normal thing most people do. But I just got kind of self-critical to the point where I just didn't enjoy it at all. And then once I stopped watching it, I realized I was just left self-conscious on set because I was not thinking that I would ever, even unconsciously, thinking that I would ever have to contend with it in some way. It also makes me less self-conscious as an actor. I'm not aware of things that I liked watching and therefore I'll do them. Yeah. Because I also think that's because there's something kind of phony about that. The idea that I know I make this face because I remember liking me making the face, and then you try to make the face and it's then forced. To me, it's just counter to everything I like about performing. What I like about performing is I forget all of my thoughts. I'm not analyzing. I'm not self-critical. I'm not in the analytical mind that I'm normally in. And what undermines that more than sitting in a movie premiere a year later with 1,000 people and movie critics and famous people watching the thing that you did? So to me, it's totally counterintuitive. So when I stopped watching, I just got more comfortable, and now I don't even think about it.
Do you lament not being able to see other people's work, like your contemporaries, your fellow actors in movies?
Yeah, well, the thing I lament, like this movie, for example, The Art of Self-Defense. My friend Imogen, I'm friends with Imogen. So I want to see her in the movie. So I don't see it because I don't want to see myself. But I really want to see what Riley Stearns, the director of this, did, because I find his creative output really interesting.
Yeah.
I love everything he did on set. I love the way he used production design, and I love the way he used music and editing and all this stuff. And I'm curious to see, because I was so involved with every moment of the movie that I want to see what did he do with it? What is his taste? Because I think he's really talented. So that's the kind of thing I lament more than anything. Is I was heavily involved with this thing, and how did it? What is the? But I'm so distracted by myself that I can't get over it. So I miss certain things that I've been in. Or I did a Batman Superman movie, and I'm acting for a year, with a green wall in front of me, and I'm and they're telling me, oh, it's gonna have this thing, and it's gonna have octopus arms and everything, and I'm so eager to see this thing that was described to me for a year, the octopus arms and the one eye and all this stuff, and I can't see it. So stuff like that I really lament. I'm oh, what did that thing look like?
Yeah.
And I can't watch it because it keeps cutting back to.
Can't you have one of your CGI friends CGI you out?
I think somebody did that once as a gag to me. Somebody put over something over my face in each shot, just as a scene or something, because I said I wanted to watch it.
So please tell me that you're not going to go off and just write plays.
I love it. I love it. When, especially a movie like The Art of Self-Defense, I just felt wow, this is the gift. This is the reason that you hope your last movie was popular enough. It was to get to do a movie like this, where it feels this is a thing you'd be lucky to do in acting school for a day, a characterization like this, play a emotional baby, play an infant who speaks in this kind of very formal way. Like, to me, this is like a total gift. This is the reason I do it. Like, this is the reason I like it. I like acting, that is. Yeah. And it makes all the other stuff worth it. And when I say all the other stuff, like worrying about a movie being popular, worrying about, working consistently, all the stuff that makes you nervous, this is the kind of prize, I would say. And that's why I just hope to be able to do something like this again. And I would eagerly seek out a movie script that allows me to play this kind of thing. You just never see them. They're just so odd, and they require such skill and such perspective that they're few and far between.
Jesse Eisenberg, thank you.
Thank you. This was such a nice interview and such a nice discussion.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of IFP, the Independent Filmmaker Project. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.